Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on maintaining balance in the eye of the storm, 3 mindfulness practices to reduce overwhelm and lead with passion and purpose at work, offered to you through the Garrison Institute's Contemplative-Based Resilience Project. I'm Christa Tinari, director of that project and host of today's webinar with Sander Tideman. Today's webinar is part of a series of virtual events hosted by the CBR project, which is designed to help those who serve others to be well so they can serve well. We explore themes related to resiliency and well-being, including compassion, contemplative practices, trauma and resiliency, healing, leadership, and connection. Before we begin, I have a few requests and reminders to everyone tuning in. We've muted the sound for everyone but the speakers, just in order to minimize the background noise. And we ask that you keep your mic muted until we move to the Q&A. However, we welcome and highly encourage your participation in the chat. We love to see activity there. We love to receive your thoughts, your comments, and your questions. And so please type your comments and questions there. Elizabeth Preisinger is also on the call to flag your questions and share them with us during our Q&A session as well. We are recording this webinar and we'll post it to the Garrison Institute website and YouTube channel within a week's time. Please visit garrisoninstitute.org to access the recordings and view a schedule of the upcoming programs. So once again, thank you for joining us. We're starting right on time here. We know we're all in the middle of probably a busy day. And I'd like to warmly welcome our speaker and guest expert, Sander Tideman. Welcome, Sander.
Nice
Sander
to be here.
yes, nice to have you here. Sander is founder and CEO of Triple Value Leadership, executive coach, author, and he works at the intersection of leadership, contemplation, and societal impact. Sander has been associated with Garrison Institute for many years, including his leadership of the Compassionate Leadership in Finance program, as well as other programs. He draws on practices from Eastern traditions, making them relevant for leaders wishing to make a positive impact on the world, enhancing well-being and sustainability. So welcome to you, Sander. We're going to jump right into our conversation today. And I just wanted maybe if you could set the stage for us as we begin the conversation, why this conversation? Why are we having it now? And why is it important?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to discuss this important topic, because it seems to be stormy out there. I think that is quite obvious to most of us. On a macro level, definitely you see so many big changes happening every day in the headlines on social media, the political polarization, climate change, and the list is very long of things that we can be concerned about. And that, that provoke all kinds of emotions like anxiety and fear, overwhelm, depression, even all that sort of thing. So that is on a big scale. But then also, I think in our individual lives on a micro scale, life is extremely busy too, also because we are on 24/7 through social media and modern technology. And I don't think our nervous systems are really wired for that. They're not designed for that kind of 24/7, triggers, stimulus triggers all the time. And so that particularly for leaders, I would say this is even more relevant and more urgent, because as a leader, as most of you know, who take up a leadership role, your life doesn't get easier. We're trained to solve our own problems, but as a leader, you suddenly have to take on the problems of others as well, right? And so the pressure in terms of demands on your time and the things you have to worry about, it just increases, right? So that is a recipe for a lot of stress and a lot of frustration. And at the same time, leadership can be a beautiful, role, because you are supposed to, we're adding a particular value to the world. We all have a mission, And many of us serve mission-driven organizations, so we want to bring benefit to the world. So the situation of overwhelm and stress is not really serving that particular mission or purpose. So what to do about that, right? That is the big question for today.
Yes, I love the way you put that though, because you're speaking to like the opportunity that is inherent in the leadership position, both for personal, professional joy and satisfaction, like through serving others for some greater mission, which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
But then, of course, that comes with greater responsibilities and perhaps a more hectic pace, perhaps
Yeah.
competing
Yeah.
priorities, demands, those types of things, which, as you mentioned, if we don't know how to respond to those challenges appropriately, we're not feeling quite prepared, then it could actually put the good that we want to do in jeopardy then. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's unfortunate. It would be very unfortunate if that's happening. It would be very unfortunate. And unfortunately, it is happening to many leaders. And also, I think, initially people felt that if you had a burnout, that people would be weak. But the science shows that it's not the weak that suffer from burnouts or from stress and anxiety. It's more the sensitive and the more responsible among us. And of course, many of you are like that. We take up the stress of the system, of others. And so that's why I'm a strong believer in cultivating a practice. Leadership is not just a role, it's a practice. And it is really very much in line with personal development practice. You need to have the skills, you have to build the skills, and most important, you have to build a particular capacity, I think. And that's the field of what I call inner leadership. It's kind of the capacity to manifest outer leadership behaviors and skills.
that's wonderful. Thank you. So yes, we'd like to dive right into then what can we do about this? How do we work on that inner leadership and develop some of those skills? And the subtitle to this event was on these 3 mindfulness practices, or maybe they're components of a particular methodology that we might try using. So I will ask you to dive right into that.
Yeah, before I do, because it sounds appealing, a mini practice, a mini tool, but as I said, it is a real lifetime practice. I would say, it's something that doesn't happen overnight, and you're bound to stumble and fail many times. And so I see it more as a trajectory of personal growth, right? And but it helps to have a framework, and I can show, maybe Elizabeth, you can put up the first slide. I can show a sort of frame that I think is helpful, because, as I said, if you serve a mission, we all have a sense of mission, purpose. Even if you work for a for-profit organization, still you usually have an interest in making a positive impact somewhere out there on the system, on the people that you work with, on your clients, whatever stakeholders are there. Well, it's a bit like a wedding cake. If you want to have systems impact, outer impact, you need to have a strong foundation of inner leadership. And then you can, through your purpose and mission, you can bring your inner intention, your inner purpose into the world through your organization. But you have to take in mind that the bigger impact you want to have, the sort of stronger foundation you need to cultivate. And that is, I think, the requirement for leadership. And I see, if you can ignore that, you're going to be in trouble. So having said that, let's move to the practice that I'd like to share. Yes, I call it inner leadership Aikido. It is derived from sort of Eastern philosophy, where you use your opponent's energy rather than your own, resistance when you are in a difficult situation or a difficult relationships. And there are 3 steps to that. And each step in itself is a whole field of practice in a way, but you can also kind of collapse it into 3 steps and 3, moments, if you like, in when you're facing a difficult situation where you have an overload, too many demands on your time, too many conflicts to deal with, etc. So, and the first step And I'd like to show that physically because some of you may have seen Tai Chi or Aikido or Kung Fu, and the first step is to be aware of the threat that is coming to you. So your awareness, your mindfulness is extremely important. And because it is true that there are limitations, you have limitations, right? You need to recognize that. So when you feel an overload, you actually, first of all, need to recognize that, right? So that is so when an opponent is coming, you should recognize something is coming, and you're allowed to move with it, right? So you can take a step back, you can move a bit on the side. That's kind of the first step, to recognize what is happening. And here it is a kind of taking a pause. Breathing is a wonderful, practice, whatever, breathing, yoga, breath, whatever you can do. Because usually when you feel stress, your breath starts to change. It becomes more shallow, more fast. And if you can retain a deep breath, usually you're more grounded, more safe, etc. And then the whole point is taking a pause and just see there is a bit of space between what is coming at you and your response. There's a little bit of space, and that you can dance with it rather than just push back, resist it, or fight it, which is often what happens when you are feeling stressed, and automatic nervous system takes over the fight-flight response, and we just oppose it and try to push it back. But then more energy is usually accumulated and things go out of control. So here you're kind of deflecting the energy. You're working with your awareness, your mindfulness. You become aware that what's coming at you and the emotion that is arising is not you. It's just something that happens to you, and you're aware of it. So you can say, okay, I feel stressed. I'm not the stress itself, but I feel it. I'm aware of it. And then also realize that unless, most of the situations are not life-death situations. So you can continue to take a pause and keep breathing and anchor yourself. Yeah, so that's basically the whole field of mindfulness and self-compassion, where you really take care of yourself. If something's coming, you recognize it, and you make sure you're going to be okay. You try to deflect, you try to move with the threat, and just deflect it to the side so it doesn't overwhelm you. Yeah, so that's kind of step one. Step two is that you keep engaging with it, because that's also important. It's ultimately, it seems like a threat, but in essence, it's not a threat. It's just energy. It's just energy coming at you. And you try to retain your ground, but you are present with what is coming at you, with the other people, the other, persons who are, asking for your attention, whatever. And you realize that while you can be open, you're not responsible for everything. So it's very neutral engagement. You can call it empathy, because it's really opening up your whole being to what is happening. Of course, you have the first step, you have grounded yourself, you anchored yourself, you found your safe space. Here you are opening up and relating with what is happening. You try not to be reactive. You listen, but you don't try to react. So without any judgment and that type of thing. And if there's any negative energy here, again, it's important to notice and just don't take that upon you. Just like keep deflecting it, but keep also noticing and engaging and relating. And you can also gather information in this whole thing. What is really happening? You're still kind of allowing the energy to come at you and to work with it, right? You're not reacting. So that is what I call relating. Yeah. And the third step is where and then the whole, thank you. The third step is where you redirect energy and you bring it towards a direction that you want it to go to. And that's where mission and purpose are going to be very important. That's something of course, you need to prepare. You need to know your mission, your purpose, organization's missions. What is the direction that you want the energy to go to, including all the energy that is first directed at you as a leader. You always get sort of a lot of attention and energy directed at you. But here your job is to direct the energy to the direction, to the mission of the organization, and ultimately to the benefit, to the stakeholders, the beneficiaries of your organizations, your clients, whoever they are. Right. And so here your empathy moves towards what is called compassion. There was a little bit of analysis involved with compassion, a bit of wisdom. where, there is this sense of direction and purpose, and you guide, the people that, first approach you and you felt an overwhelm, you neutralize it kind of in a way, and now you guide them towards serving the mission of your organization, which should also be the mission of your leadership, the purpose of your leadership. Now, and if you do that, it becomes more like life becomes more like a dance. It's more like, engaging, working with energy, returning it to the appropriate place. And it's an ongoing thing, and you're not rigid, and you're not sort of defending, protecting, and you keep also relaxed. That's very important. You keep relaxed in the process. You try to rejoice, because ultimately the energy is utilized and is on purpose, instead of just creating an overwhelm for you. It becomes energy that serves the purpose of the organization. So that is basically the whole thing: compassion and action. And you can call that, Aikido, right? And it keeps going. It will never stop. Every day when you go to the office, you open your iPhone, some energy will come at you, emails, problems, but try to see them as opportunities for this dance. I hope that's a bit helpful. I can say more. Maybe there are some questions for the chat, or maybe I'm not completely clear.
Thank you. Yeah, we would be happy to take questions about what's been presented so far in the chat. I wanted to just provide some reflections on what you've shared so far. I thought of alchemy when you were speaking, like you were speaking about the redirection of the energy, but it sounds like you're also referring to a transforming of the energy in some way. I was thinking of an example, like if someone is like, let's say the overwhelm has to do with someone approaching me with a very strong emotion of maybe blame or anger or something. I wouldn't want to just, it's not like a boomerang. I don't want to just send that energy back to them as is, right? So there's some kind of a transformation that's made, with this energy. I'm wondering if you could speak to that process, because I think that is, it's not so simple to do that in the moment if we're feeling thrown off our game, or a desire to, someone gives us something, we want to give it back.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a very important point, and we went pretty fast. So, that's good to spend a bit of time on. I think that it's the whole field of what I call self-compassion, where, and that's a complicated term, because, who are we, and self-compassion we also associate with selfishness or narcissism, but self-compassion is something completely different in a way. It is really, I see, as knowing yourself and feeling yourself and being with yourself. And when you are feeling threatened, or you feel pressured or stressed, then something quite interesting happens usually, which is what you call our survival brain, our survival response, right? We want to get rid of what is pressuring us. And here you mentioned alchemy, and here the alchemy is required. And I don't think you get it without doing some sort of introspection, some sort of meditation practice, because then you can see that this self that we want to protect, or the ego that we want to protect, is just an illusion, is a thought. It's a feeling, and it's not you, and we tend to personalize that, to say, okay, I don't want to have this feeling. This feeling is negative. It's me. And you want to get rid of that feeling. And that is the problem. Because you cannot get rid of that feeling. It occurs. It's just something that passes through you. And if you really observe, you can see it is, in fact, it's quite neutral. It's not negative. It becomes negative when you want to retain a position, when your ego wants to kind of protect the comfort it had. And that's why, again, also purpose is important, because you are not in the leadership role for your comfort. That's something you need to figure out before you take up the role. You're in that role in order to serve a mission or a purpose. And so it is ultimately, leadership is an opportunity for kind of transforming your ego in a way into something like compassion or service. That is the alchemy that is kind of happening if you do this well. And it's not easy because this is also, it's part of a biology to protect ourselves and to be in that kind of fight flight modus, right? But the scientists, the psychologists, and the contemplative traditions, they all say we have the capacity to go deeper and work with our pure mind. We are not one with our biological system. There's something more deeper, our consciousness, our awareness, which allows us to be the better version of ourselves and see this as a growth trajectory. Yeah, so that's the alchemy. So thank you for that question.
Sure, you're welcome. As you were speaking just now, I was also thinking of the importance of if you do engage in some type of mindfulness practice or meditation practice, developing the habit of awareness of the self, being aware in the moment so it's like taking that one step out to be able to view and observe what's happening within oneself and what one is experiencing. But I think, the qualities with which someone does that is very important. So we might speak about curiosity, shifting to a curiosity mindset, as opposed to a blaming mindset or a fear mindset, but that's, get really curious about your own experience and perhaps other people's as well, if you're dealing with a complex situation. And just really try to, like you said, depersonalize a bit.
Yeah.
So this idea of sort of naming like, oh, that's frustration, or even if you're experiencing overwhelm, to think that's overwhelm, instead of I'm overwhelmed. What I do mentally is make a little switch into that's overwhelm. That's with me. It's with me right now. I forget which, there's some languages who don't say emotions the same way. They don't say I am, they say, fear is with me or anger is with me, like as if it's almost a companion of sorts, but a piece, of ourselves, but also something that we can, as you said, gain a little separation with.
Yes.
And it would seem to me that would be, an important part to trying to find that balance.
I would say that whole first domain of mindfulness, there are many types of mindfulness practices, but this is a very important one because the ability to name the emotion already implies that you're not identified with it, right? It's not you are outside the emotion, otherwise you couldn't name it, right? So it opens up that space between the emotion and reality and your awareness. And the more you can familiar yourself with your awareness, the state of awareness, rather than everything that floats through it, like emotions, thoughts, all kinds of things, so perceptions and sensations, they come all the time, but there is something like a container, which you can call awareness. Sometimes they talk about meta-awareness, which is really your essence, which is really truly you, or, a higher consciousness, or you can say, but then we have this narrative of our ego who wants to identify with, one or two things and blows it out of proportion. And that creates a whole negative chain. So, so if you if you manage to develop a practice where you can find that space between the stimulus and the response, or the content of your awareness and the awareness itself, then I think you're on the right track. And that's not just a spiritual path, but that's a leadership path as well. I think great leaders, very effective leaders, compassionate leaders, they have that ability, and they create also they manifested space also in their relationships and in their teams and in the organization. So people are not just freaked out all the time or overwhelmed all the time, but there is a sense of space and safety where people can actually perform better. Yeah, so that's why this inner leadership that we talk about is very important for the ultimate, result and effectiveness of the organization.
Right. And can you speak a little more about the qualities of inner leadership? When you say inner leadership, what is what are the components of that?
Well, okay, yeah. Well, well, first of all, the open mind, I would say the open mind, non-judgmental. Um, we're so quick, particularly modern people, we've been in school and we're so quick in judging, on naming stuff and judging and have a whole story, very fast intellectual brains. And, so we don't really practice an open mind in Zen Buddhism. They talk about the beginner's mind, that we should always have a beginner's mind. So I would say the same as an open mind. And you can say also the open heart, where you just, take the space, for being with it, whatever it is, just be with it for a moment instead of just reacting. I think this is the most fundamental quality. And it comes also with curiosity. And, let's say, okay, like what's really going on here? Is my assessment of the situation correct? Right? Is my opinion correct? That's another thing. We have so many opinions, no? And leaders, this is also an interesting dynamics, I think, in leadership, where the leader is supposed to know the answer, right? And, it's kind of the expert leader or the hero leader who's, well, I'll solve it for you. Or I tell you, what's important. But that's not really leadership. That is just, that's just your opinion. And, a real, true act of leadership is to open up to the others and find a collective response that is usually more intelligent and wiser than just your individual opinion. So, so openness, curiosity, these two are the most fundamental, I would say. And then, of course, there is also something like what I said, care or compassion and the mission, the purpose. You need to find something higher than just you and the immediate situation, because that ultimately is a source of a lot of positive energy that people want to relate to in leadership. Otherwise we just like this, it becomes very mechanical and your 9 to 5 job, and that's kind of, in a way, that's not really what we want. We want to have a meaningful life, a purposeful life. We want our work to be meaningful, purposeful. So that's also an important component, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for presenting that 3-part model. There's so much in there. We need, we could do a whole much longer course on each piece of it. But I think the framework is very helpful, even for people just to start thinking about some of those pieces within it. I'm wondering if you have any advice for folks who maybe haven't engaged in a type of awareness practice before, since it sounds like that is so important to this process. What might your advice be regarding how folks could get started, or what piece of what you've maybe presented here, should we think about getting started with?
Well, it's hard to advise. There's so much out there these days. But I would not forget the body. I didn't talk too much about it, but the first step to be aware of your emotions is also a very physical thing. Like you really understand what emotions do to your body, and therefore breath is very essential. So I would first start with practices that, like yoga or qigong or tai chi, where you really become aware of what happens in your body when all that sort of thing, because it is also, when you go into deeper, more contemplative approaches, the body remains very important as an anchor. It's also good for your health. Basic health is very important. So that would be my recommendation. Whatever you do, don't forget the body, and not just running or triathlons and all these type of things, do extreme sports, because they can actually amplify the survival brain, and that is not, there's some new science on that, which I find quite interesting, that because a lot of us believe that strenuous sort of real effort is positive, but that there are some downsides there too. So some gentle movements, outdoor activity in general is very important for opening up the mind as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the body. We do deal with that a lot in Contemplative-Based Resilience Project
Yeah,
because we are investigating, our own awareness of our response to stress and also resilience, all the positive qualities, the ways that we build that muscle for that space between the thought or the feeling and the reaction and a whole bunch of other things, the way that we perceive the world around us and gratitude and being able to get in touch with and use the resources that we do have,
mhm,
to be resilient human beings.
mhm.
And one of the parts of your model that relates to that is this idea that we could remind ourselves that there's not a crisis happening. There may be a challenge. There may be something uncomfortable. There may be a difficult situation or emotion. But that if it's not, the end of the world, um, we don't have to we don't have to go down the path, perhaps with our own body that's responding to it as if it is an
Yeah,
emergency,
yeah,
because that actually decreases our ability to engage with creativity and
yeah,
constructive thinking and openness and awareness. We get a very narrow focus, when that happens.
yeah,
So the idea of being able to perceive the sensations of your body and the feelings of safety and well-being in one's body as it relates to this subject matter, I think is really important.
yeah,
Um, and some people can get quite heady. They're going to try to fix everything through just thinking, but
yeah,
actually it's interrelated. So we can't just do one and not the
yeah.
other.
No, absolutely. But it's also countercultural. I think my journey into this work was also, I was so much trained with thinking, from my upbringing, and it's taken me a long time to become less attached to my own thinking. I'm still a strong thinker, so to speak, but there's so much more intelligence in a way in our body, right? If, our somatic experience is very wise. There's a lot of wisdom in there. The gut feel, we already know the gut feel, right? But do we use it? I don't think many of us use it, right? And then the heart, the emotions and strong emotions all live in this area of the heart, right? And there's a lot of intelligence there too, like what you really like to do. That's not a thing that for leaders, they take their job so seriously often and with a sense of responsibility, but then they lose their passion and their joy, because it's so much hard work. And going back to our first point, that is unfortunate because you are actually in a place where you can really, create beautiful stuff for the world. We can create solutions for incredible suffering in the world, um, and so why feel that as a burden? That you feel as a kind of a blessing. And that has to do with the heart, I would say. And then, of course, there's the creativity, the sort of with leadership, you have a certain power, and you can innovate, you can experiment. And if you just see it as a heavy burden responsibility, and you cannot make any mistakes, then you're also missing the opportunity to create and innovate. And so that's all in different parts of our body, right? It's not just the brain; it's the whole system and the collective. We opening up to our collective energy or collective intelligence that is so beautiful, collective creativity. And
Yeah.
in leadership, often there is a sense of power and a power over, and then you know creativity is stifled. And that
Mhm.
I believe the job of the leader is to empower ultimately other people so that their creativity and their um, a problem solving capacity enhances. And as a leader, that you actually don't try to solve any problem,
Mhm.
but just empower others to solve their problems.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think that there is a sense of isolation that a lot of leaders feel, and I think sometimes the systems within which those leaders are operating
Yeah,
are not necessarily always set up for that type of, collaboration and enhancement and sort of
yeah,
this mutualism, right? There's these barriers and there's the way that
yeah,
we set up our system. So that's a whole other conversation around like
yes,
how to build the structures within which people can be supported
Yes.
in acting this way and
Yes.
acting their leadership in this way.
Yeah.
And so something that came to mind is just courage, right? Like I think there is an element of courage that this
Yeah.
takes to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
in touch with yourself, with others, but to, try new things, make mistakes.
Mhm.
And so that is, I think, a characteristic,
Yeah.
for inner leadership as well as outer courage is there.
Yeah. Courage.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
wouldn't go there in the beginning, but I think courage, and also part of self-care is to create a space for you to flourish, and perform as a leader. And that implies what I call upward leadership. You have to tell your superiors, whether it's the board or whoever, that you need a certain space. And if they don't want to provide you that and just want to micromanage you, then you're in the wrong place, right? That you cannot flourish in a situation like that. So that takes courage to tell your boss basically, give me more space, but or support me in a positive way rather than uh, you know, um, making me nervous or anxious, which is happening a lot. So but that is a higher level
Right.
of leadership than what we can talk about right now.
Sure. I
But it's all
understand. There's
connected.
a lot more we can go
Yes,
into.
all connected.
Yeah, I want to pause and just make a quick announcement, just so folks know before they leave the call, about a 5-week course that Garrison Institute is launching this summer called Inner Transformation for Social Impact Leaders. And Sandra, you'll be one of the experts, guest speakers in that course, along with wonderful other folks like Dacker Keltner from Greater Good and Rhonda McGee and Dan Siegel and, all these wonderful experts. And what I'm really excited about is we'll be exploring this topic, but also, different pieces of it because we have more time then to do that, right? So we're thinking about our connection with the natural world, and the body and awe and contemplative practices, awareness, mindfulness, how all these pieces fit together. So I just wanted to say we're excited to announce that. We're excited you'll be a part of it. And everyone who's joining us today will get an announcement about it and feel free to share it. We'll also be sending it out to anyone who registered who's watching the video as well. So we encourage you to look more into that if you might be interested. So I think we have just a couple minutes left. I just wanted to make sure if we open the floor, I was looking at chat for questions, but I just wanted to open the floor to see if anyone at this moment has a question they would like to ask Sander.
Or to Christa, because you're an expert in your own right,
Sure, thank you. Yes, of course. Let's see if anything's coming up. Not yet. It's no problem, as well. These topics are quite, some of them, they need a little chewing on for a while, right? Kind of sit with it. And see, we'll send you the slides too, so you have that Aikido framework. But yeah, you can feel free to unmute if you have a question. If not, we'll close with a final thought or final question. Okay, well, I'll move us on but if you do have a question and it comes to you before the end of the call, feel free to put it in chat. We can always also follow up. We're happy to do that. So let's see. So thinking about sort of putting these pieces together, Sandra, we talked a little bit about, what it means to have this inner leadership, what it means to transform this energy, how to get perhaps a sense of awareness of your own self, taking all that information in, how to get started. You mentioned a few practices for people for how to get started. What other advice might you have, especially for folks to whom this might be a newer practice or who maybe feel stuck?
Well, ask for help. I think like the program you are going to offer on inner transformation is a good example, but there are many courses these days, and ask for help, because it is tough and we don't learn it at school. We should realize that when you take up a leadership role, maybe for the first time, or you've been doing it for a long time, and you realize you're kind of stuck, or your batteries are depleted, ask for help, because it's something in our culture. Somehow we miss, we underestimate. It is not that easy to be a good, effective, and happy, joyful leader. It takes knowledge, it takes learning, and it takes practice, and it takes also a community and friends and teachers, etc. So that will be another final piece of advice.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think, yeah, it's easy to think that you have to do it all on your own, or that if you can't do it all on your own, you're somehow not qualified, to be leading, or you have doubts about that. But my experience is similar to yours. It's like the most successful leaders are those who do reach out, and who are getting support from others, and who are collaborating and supporting each other.
Yeah, something I had to learn, when it was too late in my, I always thought I needed to be tough and strong and figure out everything myself, but that was a recipe for a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, to that point, we did get one question in chat, and it was about leaders who are feeling like they're already burnt out.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to folks who are feeling like they're already burnt out? The question is, how do you heal while keeping up your leadership responsibilities? I don't know if one attempts to do that or not, but what do you think?
That's a tough one. That's a very tough one. Again, I will ask for help. Get advice from people, and it is an opportunity. I would say a burnout or overload or whatever you want to call it. It is also an opportunity for personal growth. There is something you can learn from this situation. Don't see it as a medical problem. Sometimes that's how it's diagnosed. Like, okay, you have a particular problem. That is not the case. It's just something. It's an opportunity for learning and growth. But seek expert advice, and open up about it. In a certain way, as a leader, you cannot open up to everyone, but there must be people in your world that you can share it with, and do so, because in opening up, you realize you're not the only one who suffers from this type of problem.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that advice. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for being with us today, everyone who joined us, and also if you've watched the recording, thank you for tuning in. Sander, thank you so much for your wisdom and bringing your experience to us. And also thanks for your support for the Garrison Institute and for, this enlightening conversation. Just a reminder, all contemplative-based resilience forums, like the one we're doing today, are offered free of charge. And we, always could use more funding to continue our programming and reach out to more people and reach the need that's out there to explore these topics. So if you'd like to offer your support, you can visit garrisoninstitute.org and click the donate button to make a contribution. What's just as good is if you check out our programs and see something that you think you might benefit from on our calendar. So if you're not familiar, please take a look and see what's there. And we do really enjoy learning together and sharing together. So with that, I'll close today's webinar, but I want to thank everyone for being here and stay in touch. Thanks so much.